Hi, Sharda Ugra here again. Welcome to Out of the Park, a weekly program about the World Cup, things around the World Cup that are happening. We are at basically what is called the pointy end of the tournament. For some teams, South Africa and England are looking very strong. And one of the more interesting storylines in this World Cup has been the absolute implosion of defending champions England. And as we're seeing over the last couple of days, New Zealand are also now literally having to scrabble, hanging on by their fingernails to make the top four. They're going to be playing Pakistan on Saturday here in Bangalore. I'm going to that game to let's see how it goes. With regard to England, we wanted to work out what it was that had led them, such a strong team that was seen as favourites alongside India, into the stage where halfway through the tournament, virtually, say maybe 4 weeks out of 6, they had just knocked themselves out of contention. So I decided to speak to English cricket commentator Alison Mitchell, who's one of the most distinctive and singular voices in the game. But unfortunately, you don't hear as much about what Alison thinks about the game as you should. So here's a conversation with Alison. She has some very, very interesting points to make about the World Cup and about the format of a 50-over cricket that I'm sure all of you will enjoy. It's a total pleasure to welcome one of my favorite voices on from the cricket commentary box in cricket as well, Alison Mitchell. Thank you so much for being here in Out of the Park. I was going to read a long introduction to you, but that'll just take up time, that your time and my time, and I can do it before. Alison is in London. She's a cricket commentator and a sports broadcaster. She has a Wikipedia entry. Go ahead and read it. It'll tell you everything.
We don't believe everything you read on Wiki.
But at the moment,
go to my own website.
But I do know that that you're a fan of Schitt's Creek. That is not on Wiki, but it has been revealed to me. My research has revealed to me. Anyhow, Alison is, among many other things, she's the host of the BBC's Stumped podcast, which you can catch on BBC World Service online and as well as on the BBC World Service YouTube channel. So I'm speaking to a complete professional in the business, and I'm, of course, an amateur of the last 3 weeks. Alison, today is the day after. So what is it like? What was that like? So why don't you start with as an English slash half Australian? What did that game yesterday look like to you? It was.
Yeah. First of all, Shala, thank you for having me on, and it's a pleasure to speak to one of my favourite writers and people around the cricket circuit. So thank you very much. It's quite appropriate that we're around about Halloween, aren't we? In the UK and around the world at the moment. And horror show has been one of the headlines in the newspapers over here. So they're cashing in on that's for sure. After the Bangalore defeat, the headlines were Bungaluru. And after Lucknow, it's look away now. These kind of headlines. Madness is another one, that idea of doing the same thing over and over and over, which England are very much sort of accused of in terms of their batting, when, it was a run chase against India that eminently gettable for, if you like, a normal England team. But it's just confounding everybody, really, as to what has gone wrong for this team, who, when the squad was announced and they, set about a series, albeit a very brief one, against New Zealand at the end of the English summer, they lost one of the matches, but they won the others convincingly. There didn't seem to be any issues. They were T20 World Cup winners. More recently, of course, the 50-over World Cup win, was already a long way away. 4 years ago, things changed, but, you could not have ever predicted that they would have been sitting bottom of the table after this latest defeat. And I think people really are still just scratching their heads. And that goes within the England camp as well. I don't think really even Joss Buttler and Matthew Mott can put their finger on exactly why they've just not been able to perform, but not performing to a spectacular degree.
So when they came into the World Cup, they were one of the top favorites outside of India. You looked at all the odds in odds checker and all the rest of it, which I do for entertainment, and it just seemed like, where did this all go absolutely wrong? Then we started hearing stories about the air quality but it wasn't. It's just been the quality of their cricket, and how, in fact, time. Everyone says now the thing is that time's caught up, and this is a generation, and their time is gone. But they had brought such a new approach to English cricket. What did you make of sort of Baz bowling in Test cricket from white ball cricket? What was your personal sort of reaction to it? I've read a piece in which you said everything is fine as long as they have to win the Ashes. You can't mess around with that. So what was your response to when England started playing the way they do, and to what you're looking at now and the current generation and so on?
Yeah, no doubt at all that what has happened to the Test team has been spectacularly good. And I think all these things go in cycles there, don't they? Because that came about, we'll go back first of all to 2015 when England were at a complete low point in the 50-over game. Alistair Cook was the captain. He then left. And then Owen Morgan comes in. They take their inspiration from Brendan McCullum's New Zealand side then. And it was like, here is our white ball reset. So all the focus goes into that 4-year cycle, must perform well in 50-over cricket. And they won the World Cup. In the meantime, the Test match team has lost that many matches under Joe Root. They go to Australia. It's the Ashes. It's an abysmal defeat. We need a red ball reset, lots of resources, and all the Ben Stokes still not able to actually overhaul the Aussies. But the results that they'd had in the meantime and the manner in which they were playing was absolutely thrilling. But in the meantime, it's meant that 50-over cricket has really slipped again to the back burner. And you look at the preparation leading into this World Cup for England, and it really was for this group of players only those 4 ODIs against New Zealand in September, where the players had to have been tired already by that point because they'd come through the Ashes in June, straight June, July, straight into the 100, which started about like 2 days after the Oval Test match, if not the very next day after the Oval Test match. Some had a bit of a breather, but I do think mentally, I know not every player in this white ball team also played in the Ashes, but mentally wise for some of those players, it is an incredible load. But when you talk about 50-over cricket, it's not the same as T20, is it? You can't just kind of string 2 lots of 20 together and an extra 10 overs and say, here we go, we're going to play in exactly the same way. It's more nuanced than that. And players have got to know their roles. You've got to sort of have this sense of having an 11 players together that is solid, that know what they're doing. And you go back to the ODIs that England have had in the last year or so. I was looking back to when they had a series over in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, sent effectively a second team, which, sort of comes back to bite England, now, doesn't it, in terms of, underestimating lower opponents. All these opponents need respect now. But then ODIs against Pakistan, that again was sort of a second string. So I think that was a scheduled clash with probably Test matches, if I remember rightly. And then ODIs after the T20 World Cup win in Australia last year. That again was the second 11 because it was kind of all after the Lord Mayor's show. And then ODIs in Bangladesh clashed with New Zealand's Test. So again, the best players weren't playing and building towards. So just the focus for this World Cup really felt like it was 1 month before the tournament. And that is just simply not enough to really bring, the players together, your team together, to build something, to have that sense of solidity and everybody knowing their roles. And I think that, and I'm sure coupled with fatigue for a lot of them. And then you've got, the tosses going wrong in terms of the sort of match day stuff, the ECB contracts that are still, were being negotiated into the World Cup. Like that could not have helped as well. So there was a number of factors going into it, which just has meant a big muddling mess ultimately.
And did you sort of get a feeling that something like this was going to happen, because you're following it much more closely than all of us over here in India? Did you get a feeling that this is not looking fine, or that the talent will carry them through? They've played together for such a long time. Because we see that, in all teams, you look at it and you say something is a bit off here. So in India, we had a lot of changes and second string teams, and someone's playing and someone's not playing, but it seems to have come through perfectly. It looks like a beautifully planned operation and forward planning. But what about yourself when you saw this happening, second team playing in ODIs and so on?
Yeah, I think in a way we were just sort of caught up in the hype of the quality of the players that England have, and trusting and believing in their ability to be able to drop into the 50-over format and perform. They'd translated almost their 50-over cricket attacking style into the Test match style. So you sort of thought, well, they would then be able to translate their kind of shortest form, 100 form cricket into 50-over cricket. But that just hasn't happened. Not helped. I think in that series against New Zealand, the attention was really all on the minutiae of the personnel, i.e. one person, and that was Harry Brook, and would he force his way into the squad, and if so, who was going to have to sort of make way. But even the actual announcing of the World Cup squad was a bit muddled, in that, you know, England were very definite on, this is our World Cup squad, which I thought, well, that's a bit sort of early to say, given that you've got a whole series against New Zealand and the squad doesn't actually have to be finalised until the end of the month. So why say that, you know, nail your colours to the mast and say this is our World Cup squad? Because that kind of created then, like, it was a huge, you know, a big deal for someone to be dropped, like Jason Roy dropped from that World Cup squad. Whereas if that was just, here is the ODIs for this series, where, you know, it's still kind of malleable. I understand probably why they did it, because they want to give players certainty. And, you know, that is often an ingredient for success as well. But it created a bit of a sort of circus around the Harry Brook situation, and then probably took all of our focus away, you know, from what would have been sort of wider issues around, is this really a team that has had the right amount of cricket all together? I think that the stat was, wasn't it, that the 11 that took the field for England's opening World Cup match had never actually played before as an 11, which seems just sort of unacceptable, really, to start the World Cup with a team that's never played together before.
And so sort of extraordinary facts coming from you, Alison. You say, of course. Now everything makes sense when you look at it like that from your
I'm not even sure it still makes sense, though.
But, you know, what now of this format itself? Because everyone started asking questions, as we do every 4 years, on does the ODI format actually matter? You know, is it how is it going to work? It just looks like a much tougher format than 2020. And they say, oh, people are bored, they don't want to watch it, it's the middle overs. But it's, in terms of what it demands of players, it's just much more, like you said, much more nuanced, much more carefully thought through, requiring a lot more different physical and technical sort of ability. What do you think of the format? I mean, some doomsday people over here have started saying, I'm not people, like my friends, saying this is going to be the last World Cup, watch every game you can.
Well,
what's your...
I think certainly the ICC have mapped it out until 2031, haven't they? So I can't see anything changing before that.
They keep saying
bin it. No, like, Shada, I think if 50 over cricket goes, Test cricket goes, how can you progress from just playing T20 cricket to suddenly playing Test cricket? Like, bowlers aren't going to be able to bowl more than, you know, 4 overs at a time. And what about the associate nations for whom 50 over cricket is their Test cricket? What about the women's game for whom 50 over cricket? I know this argument around 50 over cricket binning it is more based around the men's game, but that is the format which is the pinnacle in the women's game at the moment. So I don't think you can say get rid of ODI cricket. It is that transitional format between the T20 game and the Test match game. I can see a time, though, where, well, I mean, it will already happen really now, doesn't it? Like, the amount of bilateral cricket has really diminished. The figures for how many matches all the teams, you know, certainly all the Test playing teams have played in this last 4-year cycle is significantly less than between 2015 and 2019 World Cup. So I could see a time where, and we kind of saw it a bit, haven't we, where, say, Ben Stokes has come out of, if you like, bilateral retirements to play in a World Cup. You know, Trent Boult doesn't have a New Zealand contract, but he pops up to play in the 50 over World Cup. You know, Quinton de Kock is retiring from ODIs, but who knows if he's still, you know, playing in another 4 years' time in the T20 circuit. Maybe he will, you know, want to play again in a 50 over World Cup. So you could have a scenario where actually, you know, a lot less 50 over cricket is played at that top level by the Test playing teams, but then they all come together for the 50 over World Cup. But you still need to have a strong 50 over competition for the associate teams, for the women's game, obviously. And then that means that, you know, teams will need to be playing at a domestic level as well. And this is where, again, the English game has a real problem, because at the moment, the England and Wales Cricket Board has relegated the domestic 50 over tournament to effectively a developmental tournament, because it happens at the same time as the 100. So there's no way that has had an effect on this team at this World Cup. But, you know, in another, I don't know how many years, of course, that's going to have an impact, because your best short form players are never going to be playing 50 over cricket until they're suddenly picked for England. But is that right that they're picked for an England team based purely on their ability in T20 and 100 cricket? Because they just won't have been tested in the 50 over game. So that, to me, is a real muddle that the English game has to sort out as well. But as far as a 50-over game goes, I really do think that if you get rid of ODI cricket, that surely is a quicker way to bring about the demise of Test cricket than anything else, because players just simply, will struggle to make that step. It's such a huge leap. Sure, there's domestic, 4-day cricket, but to make a leap from T20 internationals to Test cricket, like that's an enormous ask.
And for example, who wants a World Cup that comes once every 2 years? It's not even a serious competition.
Well, Champions Trophy's back, isn't it? So effectively, there is a 50-over World Cup every 2 years. I mean, I feel that is not a necessity at all. A World Cup every 4 years. We've already now got T20 World Cups in those, interlocking years in between. I mean, Champions Trophy to me is overkill.
And a Champions Trophy now, the new sort of story that came out, I think, on Cricinfo, saying that, look, if England don't make the top 8, they have to qualify for the World Cup next time. That's Champions Trophy and whatever. So basically you've answered my next question as well. So are you looking again at, I was asking sort of what is the future of the game like? There's going to be a meeting after this World Cup gets over to decide on bilateral cricket. And you've given the headline. If 50-over cricket goes, Test cricket goes, that should worry everyone, light a fire under everyone's chairs. What do you think England's going to do? Is it going to be reset again?
There's so many resets. Like I said, it does seem to be cyclical, isn't it? That it might be that a lot of attention now goes back on the 50-over game for England, but then they need to keep the focus, going so much on the Test team as well. The calendar in cricket has been a mess for such a long time, and the number of leagues now is making it even more so. And players, understandably, want to play where they're paid the most. And the only really way that international cricket can retain its primacy is somehow for international boards to be able to pay their players kind of what they are worth. And the demand on cricketers is immense. And compared to so many other sports, the amount of time that is required away from home, tours, it's even when you're playing in your home nation, you're effectively on tour, aren't you, around the country, whether it's India, South Africa, Australia, England, wherever you're on the go, living out of hotels in that time. But where that money comes from, can the ICC produce some sort of almost international fund to, they already do in effect, don't they? They give grants to their full members and their associate members. But does that money, and the ICC has a lot of it, and it has the ability to generate a lot through these global events, should they take a wide responsibility for trying to monetize the game globally? And some would say, well, that's not how, the international game should be on a sort of meritocratic basis in terms of, the country that generates the most income and pays their players the most, and then they will be the strongest. Or do we want to actually try and make sure that, the best players in the world are able to represent their countries? We sort of hang on to international cricket, don't we, as the absolute primacy of the game, and I love international cricket. I think almost more than any other form of the game.
Absolutely.
The leagues are interesting of their own, but I don't remember individual games, like whether it's the IPL, whether it's the 100, and I commentated a lot of the 100 this year. But if you said to me, recall a particular match, there's maybe the odd moments, but it doesn't stick in your mind as much as sort of big international occasions do. So, but the difficulty is how on earth to get everybody playing year round in a way that means your best players are available to play internationals, and yet they're satisfying, the ability to go and play in the leagues as well. I don't have the answers, Shada. I wish I did. And if I did, I'd be running the ICC.
If you did, you wouldn't be running the ICC. They would absolutely not stand for someone with a mind of their own to be there. Let's remember that. One last very, very quick question. Cricket at the Olympics, Alison. You've been to the Olympics. You've been to multi-sport events. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea? Nation versus nation still, which is great, which I love as well. Yeah.
No, I'm a bit of a traditionalist insofar as I never thought sort of golf or tennis should really be in the Olympics. For me, the Olympics, is where that should be the pinnacle of that sport. But I completely understand all the arguments as to why the ICC wants cricket in the Olympics, because it wants to sort of reach out into those nations that don't traditionally play cricket at the moment and get that wider exposure. And goodness, if it unlocks, say, the US market in a way that, of course, Major League Cricket is already starting to do, if it unlocks a Chinese market in a bigger way. But of course, this first, Olympics in LA, it will be, well, it sounds like it will be effectively like another little Champions Trophy, but in T20 format. So, it'll be the same teams that we see play cricket everywhere else around the world. And they will hope it will have a sort of inspirational effect, I guess. It's certainly not going to have a participatory effect in that particular Olympic Games. But, I got swept up in the women's T20 at the Commonwealth Games. I commentated on that in Birmingham. And yes, it was wonderful for those cricketers to have an opportunity to win a gold, silver and bronze and be part of that multi-sport event. So the cricketers will really, really love it. They will probably get more out of it than the fans, for whom it will just be, in a way, another global cricket event, of which we've just talked about the schedule. I mean, how on earth it's going to fit in, I really don't know. The other thing which I thought was quite amusing was the weight placed on Virat Kohli's social media reach, because maybe 38. I don't think he'll be quite 40 by the time the LA Olympics comes around. But
close to.
It's not likely he'll be.
He should be able to make 40, Alison. Tendulkar made almost 40, so he should get there.
Well, I guess even whether he's playing or not, I'm sure he'll have some sort of figurehead role with the IOC, because they won't want to let go that sort of social media reach. But I thought they're putting quite a lot of straw on one individual player there. But got to hope that it does result. I mean, this is the thing about this World Cup, Shada, is that there's a lot of wringing of hands, isn't there, for those teams who fall foul of the likes of Afghanistan and the Netherlands. But this is what cricket should be. We want to grow the game, and it's just no one wants it to be their country who is the one who ends up on the the wrong end of the time when these other nations actually start to get better. And goodness, like, that's what sports should be about, is nations getting better and new countries coming in and competing and winning. It's just a shame for all the England supporters at the moment that it's England who've been on the wrong end of it.
So are you going to pick your World Cup finalists quickly? Just
I'll give the final only. I'll give you India and I would say Australia. I'm going to get India, South Africa, because I would actually really love to see how South Africa can fare to get through a semi-final. Would be an enormous achievement for them at a World Cup. So let's go India, South Africa. Sorry, the Aussies.
Yeah. Alison, thanks a ton. Lovely to talk to you, and good luck for everything. And here's hoping that England will sort of rise like the phoenix with another reset. Thank you so much again for being on Out of the Park. It was an absolute joy.
Thanks, Shada. Thanks for having me.
I enjoyed that chat with Alison, where she had a lot of interesting observations about what had taken England to this point, what has led them there, and about the future of the 50-over format. So she says, get rid of the 50-over format. It's almost like you're signing the death knell for Test cricket. For those of you who don't know Alison's and her career, she's one of the pioneering women commentators in the game. In the year 2007, she became the first woman to do ball-by-ball Test match commentary for an iconic TV program, Test Match Special, on BBC, as we all know it. And then in 2014, January 2014, the same thing happened. Alison became the first woman to do ball-by-ball commentary on Australian Broadcasting Corporation's Grandstand program for a series in Australia. Now she's a regular. She's also, like I said, she's the host of the Stump podcast that's run on that TMS runs on BBC World Service, and also you'll be able to see it online on YouTube. Coming to the Cup as it is now, we are watching India literally turn into this massive juggernaut of a team. We're seeing their performances literally going from strength to strength. If they win the World Cup, and the chances are very, very high, I think the bets on them are off. It's no point betting on India winning the World Cup, looks like. They won't be the first team to have won every single match. It's happened before. But in terms of their performance and how solid and how all-round and perfect it virtually looks, they're certainly going to be up there with all the greats that are the great teams that have won the World Cup. One of the more interesting points in this is, for the first 4 games, India chased every time. They chased down every total, and everyone said, oh, they haven't been able to set a target. Now they set a target against England and Sri Lanka, and their bowling has come and blown the opposition batting pulling away. One of the other angles that has taken place is that Hardik Pandya's injury was seen as a bit of a setback, and how we're going to manage. And if you get Mohammad Shami into the team, it's going to upset the balance of the batting. But Mohammad Shami's had none of it. He's bowled about 19 overs in this match. He's bowled about 19 overs in this World Cup. And as far as at this point, as I'm speaking, while I'm speaking, he's taken 12 wickets in those 19 overs. He's been phenomenal. A very high rate of very high strike rate, economy rate, all the rest of it. He's played 3 matches and a bit. 2 matches and a bit, which the third match is going on. So we're watching his performance. So also we've seen in the last 2 games, you've seen the Indian batting, the number 4 and number 5, the middle order that we got a bit nervy about, sort of come through. Shreyas Iyer had a great performance against the Sri Lankans. So we're all now set for the Indians to take on South Africa, and then try, when they win against Sri Lanka, which they're going to do pretty soon, and say by the time I finish this, the match could be over. They're through to the semi-final. They will be the number 1 team. It would look like with the net run rate and so on, and we'll see how it goes from there. One of the funny parts that while I interviewed Alison just after England sort of collapsed and went out of the World Cup in the match against India that they played in Lucknow. The word Bazball, which England is known for in Test cricket, was introduced as a part of the Collins dictionary, as an actual word that we use to describe a style of cricket or performance. Naturally, an Australian was very upset about it. Manas Labuschagne said it's garbage. It's garbage, and England's performance in the World Cup has frankly been very, very below par. So, the pressure is now on sort of teams like, say, who are going to be the number 3 and 4 teams. So South Africa and India pretty much through to the semi-finals. Now you've got New Zealand, you've got Sri Lanka, and you've got New Zealand, you've got Pakistan. It changed. Afghanistan have a very good chance, because Afghanistan saying, look, we can make it through the World Cup, and we are not here just to make up the numbers. And they've done that in their performance through the entire competition, with the way that they've been able to use their spinners, with the way that their batting has turned up, and taken on the big totals, and they've shown that they are absolutely at the top of the stage. It was quite moving to have one of their batsmen say that he was dedicating his performance to the Afghan refugees who are being sent home by the Pakistan government as we speak. We're seeing that happen now. So it's been quite a moving performance in a way by the Afghans, largely supported by the crowd, and very, very well sort of appreciated all across the world as to how they've turned up and said, look, don't think of us as just 2020 players. This is the format that we can also play. It's almost seen 50-over cricket is seen as test match cricket of the white ball, and that's where they are proving themselves. Now I'll come back to my favorite, almost my favorite-ish segments here to the fan voice. Firstly, must point out a big shout out to Sharat Pradhan, who on the Wire Hindi, he did a terrific video of the black marketing of tickets, and he just showed how a website called Viagogo basically resells tickets, which you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to sell tickets in black, but it's happening. It's happening with everyone in the know. It's available on the internet to see. Another section in Fan Voice came from the match in Lucknow, where this is a personal conversation between someone who was at the game and India versus England. Someone who went to the game, a friend, someone known to a friend of mine, who was disappointed by the quality of what was available to the fans. He said it's almost like the DJ was biased, and he just supported the Indians. He just wanted the crowd to cheer on the Indians. It didn't feel like a World Cup. It felt like an IPL game. The food was expensive. It was not very good. The seating was rubbish. So there was all the acceptance that the fan in the ground is really not the person that cricket seems to be catering to. It's just being catered to the television spectacle, which is very, very sad. And at this point, I'd like to sort of again appreciate, there's a young fan called Pranav Paraswar who's been pointing out to me through his the X-File feed, the kind of black marketing that's going on in tickets. And so he's familiar with the whole Viagogo story. At the moment, There's no black marketing. I mean, there are these WhatsApp groups where people sell tickets in black, and already the 2,500 rupee tickets, which are the cheapest tickets for the final on November the 19th, are being sold for something like 30,000 rupees. They're being offered for 30,000 rupees. Whether they sell or not is another matter. The most absurd thing that happened today in the India versus Sri Lanka match was that at some point about 6 o'clock in the evening, and there's a Twitter /X message that came from a handle called All About Crick, which said that at about 6:30 in the evening, the 3,000 rupee tickets were still being sold. The match is on. The Indian innings is finished. Sri Lankans are about to start. The tickets were still being sold. So we don't know where all this is coming from. Another little piece of information that has come in sort of very, very quickly just while I'm recording this is that WhatsApp groups where tickets are sold in black are offering Eden Garden semi-final rates at about 3x of the MRP. Is being offered openly, is being offered absolutely boldly. This is just literally, it happened at about 4 minutes before I realized. And again, I was sent a message by Pranav to show me that this is what's going on. It's almost like they're bypassing the Book My Show ticketing system, and they seem to have the confidence to say that they're going to sell these tickets. So when I was reading through the all about crick through that handle, there was one fan, Amit Satya, who said, "Shame on you. We cricket lovers are not getting tickets. Seats are empty in the stadium, and you're releasing tickets of the first innings is already finished. Shame on you." And he's tagged BCCI, tagged Jai Shah, tagged Mumbai Cricket Association. So and there have been fans are so angry, with how this is the average fan on the road. It's like, I mean, this is the average fan in the street saying they don't care about us. They just care about money. They just care about the television spectacle. And there's a lot of truth, and there's a lot of anger about what has happened. And now to my final sort of section is I was told that at the moment the Pakistan media applications that came in, everyone saying, "Oh, you're still talking about this. What is this? The World Cup has started." But you have to record it. So Pakistan media applications were between 55 and say 58 or something. There's the exact number we haven't been able to get. And about 11 were given visas, and about 9 Pakistani journalists have turned up. And the ICC itself wanted a Pakistan resident in the UAE who works for them to come in here and do media duties and be part of the media department. His visa has still not turned up, so he's not turned up. And another very interesting aspect of this has been that the only capacity, the crowd numbers for matches at this World Cup that has not been made public has been the India versus Pakistan match at Ahmedabad, at the Narendra Modi Stadium. We don't know what those numbers are. And as always, I'm trying not to think that it's political. I'll see you next time.